Even though your usual isekai adventures are filled with goodies for most protagonists, that certainly was not the case for Makoto Misumi, as he gets transported from his home in Japan to a completely different world, only to have quite a harsh journey. Makoto was a below-average looking high schooler living a perfectly normal life until one day he is suddenly transported to an alternate dimension where he meets with a man named Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi breaks the news of the adventure awaiting Makoto, as he was the son of two heroes from another world. Listening to Tsukuyomi makes Makoto rather excited about what's ahead of him, as he is about to meet a goddess, but the excitement wears off pretty quickly when the goddess is just disgusted by poor Makoto's looks. After absolutely demolishing any self-respect that Makoto would have left inside him, the goddess straight up tells him to get out of her sight and throws him at the furthest wasteland that her world had to offer. The only power Makoto had received was to be able to speak every language other than human, but luckily for Makoto, Tsukuyomi pops up and lets him know how he is quite strong, as the restraints that were on him on Earth should be off by now. Makoto lands in a completely deserted area and continues to walk for 3 straight days just to have a look at something that might be living. Makoto was headed towards a mountain when he sees an orc named Emma being attacked by wolves. In his desire to help Emma, Makoto casually dropkicks the wolves to death right in front of her, but such power leaves Emma terrified. Emma invites Makoto to her hideout, but this development makes Makoto kind of sad, as he wonders whether his heroine for this isekai adventure would be Emma, the orc. After heading to Emma's hideout, Makoto learns some magic spells extremely quickly, and also gets to know how Emma was out there as a sacrifice for the dragon god Shin to eat. Hearing the trouble Emma and her people are going through, Makoto decides to help out and heads straight to Shin's domain to have a fight. Even though Shin was a huge dragon looking like Sharon from Dragon Ball, Makoto easily overpowers it even with all the smoke around the battlefield. Shin tries a different approach and starts using its ability to read memories. Shin goes through some of Makoto's memories from Japan, but that seriously pisses Makoto off. Makoto is ready to throw hands, but Shin has a change of mind and instead proposes Makoto from a contract for familiars with it. Naturally, Makoto finds Shin of use and accepts the offer. The contract was based on power levels, and despite Shin's initial assumptions, the difference in the power level between the two made Makoto Shin's master and gave it a body of a beautiful samurai woman. With Shin finally becoming someone worth calling a heroine in Makoto's life, she reveals how much she loved those Japanese history shows from Makoto's memories and hence took a samurai's form. After the contract had been finalized, Shin offers Makoto to visit her alternate dimension, where she usually rested before meeting Makoto. The two head over to the dimension, but notice how it resembles a lot to old Japanese countryside now. While the two are enjoying some persimmons, Makoto mentions the orcs to Shin and later takes her to them. Emma passes out on the first interaction, and seeing her master care for the orcs, Shin offers them to stay in the fertile land of her world. The orcs swear loyalty to Makoto, and hence they begin developing Shin's dimension and building a town from the ground up. Makoto had also gotten to know his powers better, but one thing that he didn't know was Shin's obsession with his memories. After Shin pulled out some wrong memories while looking for her dramas, Makoto suggested she cook up a way of recording memories so she can rewatch them. The idea is loved by Shin, and the process helps Makoto get to know more about his parents, as Tsukuyomi mentioned a while back. Makoto kept showing his monstrous strength around the dimension, but a random event tended to disturb the peaceful environment around him. Randomly, after feeling like something was off, Shin brings a dwarf that was being chased by a spider inside, but her prey and Makoto's blood make the spider break into Shin's dimension as well. Instead of fighting herself, Shin lets her master do the honor and fight the Black Disaster Spider. A fierce fight breaks between the two, and even though Makoto's loads of magic help him obliterate the spider, his inexperience on the battlefield combined with the spider's regeneration makes Makoto run out of juice first. With her master unconscious, Shin rushed to aid him, but she ends up worrying for nothing, as all the damage Makoto dealt to the spider made her like Makoto quite a lot. Seeing even the spider blush, I don't know how either, Shin offers her to form a contract with Makoto as well. A while after the incident, Makoto wakes up completely recovered with another beautiful girl willing to serve him for life by his side. The spider explains how Shin tried her level best to make sure Makoto is completely unscathed once again. Makoto's tent is visited by the same dwarf from earlier, who introduced himself as Baron the Dwarf Elder. On Baron's request, Makoto allows the dwarves to move into Shin's dimension as well. Shin seems to be enjoying this way more than Makoto, as she starts talking business right away. Quite the time had passed ever since Makoto came to this world, and Makoto finally saw a human settlement a long time. Makoto wanted to head over right away, but the ladies persisted that he gives them their own names first. After seeing the women act like little children, Makoto names Shin Tomo and the spider Mio before proceeding to have a look at the situation of the town. Apparently, multiple species had moved, and they all dedicate their loyalty to Makoto, officially making him the young master of the demiplane. After being around so many monsters, Makoto craves to talk to humans again, but his visit to the settlement does not go well when he just scares the whole town and almost starts a war. Makoto is back in the demiplane, wondering if he really looks that ugly when the girls explain how their master is so overpowered that he gives off the aura of multiple demon kings walking at once. Makoto was not able to conceal his aura by himself, so he assigns the dwarves the task of making some equipment while he gets determined to learn the human tongue. A week passes by, but due to the curse on him, Makoto is just unable to speak the human tongue. The young master decides to drop the plan for now and, after getting concealing equipment forged by the dwarves, heads over to the human settlement again, but this time as a merchant. Makoto's first look around the town kind of makes him self-conscious as he starts feeling bad about himself, since even the average human in this world is just straight up gorgeous. The crew heads over to the Adventurers Guild, where Tomo and Mio just shock the hell out of the crowd when their levels are revealed to be 5 times stronger than the average adventurer. Tomo comes to know about the strongest adventurer named Sophia, and Makoto gets upset after his level comes out to be just 1. That was even less than a child. After getting their adventurers' IDs, the crew books their room at an inn, and Makoto heads out to have dinner with Mio after heartlessly telling Tomo to guard their wagon alone. After having dinner, Makoto is returning back to the inn with Mio, when on the way, they come across a little girl who started crying just in front of them. Makoto decides to take the girl back to the inn, and we see how there's a lot more to this girl when a suspicious adventurer is spotted monitoring the scene. Back at the inn, the girl introduces herself as Rinin and reveals how her sister Toa is missing recently. While Makoto was busy with Rinin, his assumptions turn out to be right on the spot as his wagon is attacked by some masked dudes. Tomo had the wrong idea of pulling punches, so she just ends up cutting 3 of the 4 assaulters down to smithereens. The last one is caught by her mistakenly, so she brings them back to the young master. Makoto is lecturing Tomo on her barbaric behavior when Rinin shows a portrait of her sister. The portrait suddenly changes Makoto's behavior, and he immediately sends the women to find Toa. Makoto's stare was concerning Mio, but Tomo just tells her to trust the young master. Later on, as we are getting to know the hard time these sisters went through, we find Toa in a basement, completely devastated. Luckily for her, Mio and Tomo arrive just in time and patch her right back up. On their way back, they meet the head of this whole thief clan named Mills Ace. Mills was the one who was making Toa and Rinin do all these things, and he even tries to get the 2 servants on his side. Things were pretty peaceful up until now, but Mills makes a huge mistake when he disrespects Makoto and hence receives the recoil right in his face. The girls start going berserk on the clan's stronghold, while Makoto is outside telling Rinin that it's okay, as he was already aware to the thief clan forcing her to steal from him. Back at the stronghold, the search mission had turned into a competition between Mio and Tomo, and in the end, they just obliterate Mills with pretty much the whole town as well. Makoto was successful in getting Toa back to her sister, and he realizes just how much Toa resembles Hasegawa he knew from Japan. The sisters get to rest, finally, but Makoto sends the women to reflect on their actions as they had annihilated his merchant plans along with the rest of the city of Zetsuya. After Mio and Tomo had gone through their punishments, our group heads forward to the closest town named Tsige, alongside Toa and her friends, where now they had to re-register as adventurers. Seeing her on fire, Makoto somehow tricks Tomo into training alone, and he leaves with Mio and the adventurers for the main town. On their way to Tsigate, the wagon is interrupted by many monsters such as ruby ants, and while Mio is in charge of dispatching them, the rest of the adventurers willingly loot their collectibles. Even though no one was really believing in him and his bow, Makoto also shows some skill with it, and after a long journey, the group finally reaches Tsigate. They register firsthand at the guild, and Makoto finds an interesting job for Ruby Eyes, listed by the Rembrandt Company. Later on, Makoto joins the rest of the adventurers for dinner with Mio, where they have a ton of fun. Seeing Makoto willing to do the Ruby Eyes job, since he already had the eyes required, Toa warns him to be careful around Rembrandt's company. Makoto heads back to the hotel, where after having a good night's sleep, he straight up heads back to the demiplane to check the progress around. Little Tomo greets the young master, and we see how well things in the demiplane are coming along in every single aspect of development. Makoto also pays the dwarfs a visit, who had made some equipment for Makoto, but the young master's powers had grown so much that the equipment really serves no real use. After getting satisfied with all the development, Makoto decides to finally head back to Tsigate, where he ends up heading to the Rembrandt Company alone to save himself from dealing with the chaos. The guy heads over inside the big building, but the look on the manager's face tells him that this job will not be all that simple. The manager's name was Patrick Rembrandt, and while Makoto was at the company discussing business with him, out in town, a random adventurer is shown to be investigating the young master. Back at the company, Makoto pitches himself in front of Patrick, but as he talks for a bit, Patrick gets incredibly uninterested. Patrick's mood switches pretty quickly though when Makoto pulls those ruby eyes out of his pocket. Patrick is left in almost disbelief, and he explains how he wanted these eyes for the sake of developing a cure for his cursed wife and daughter. The whole Rembrandt staff celebrates this incredible moment together, and while they were getting all emotional, Makoto decides to head over to the Merchants Guild and get registered. The Merchants test was seeming to be quite the big deal, but Makoto just flew through the written test as it was middle school maths. The guy substitutes part of the ruby ants from earlier and becomes the fastest one to ever complete the Merchants test with a perfect score. As Makoto had left both women behind, we get back to Tomo after quite a while when she's hunting down crabs. Tomo is later enjoying some crabs without letting the young master know when a trap from Emma lures her into the memory vault. Tomo had to join Mio in translating Makoto's memories, and she gets to know about the events that happened when Mio and Makoto were alone. Back to Makoto, who was desperate to eat demiplane food again, the young master finally heads back to the demiplane and appreciates the food alongside little Tomo. Makoto was thinking of a business model for demiplane items when he is suddenly called by Tomo on urgent notice. The guy hurries back only to find the women fighting over his memories, but he somehow manages to sort things out. Mio is allowed to watch children's cartoon and anime while Tomo is told to prepare for a strict lecture. On the following night, the crew returns back to Tsigate, and Makoto kind of disappoints both women when he ends up sleeping on a chair, refusing to share beds. The next morning arrives with Makoto heading to Rembrandt's with adventurer Hazel, while the same unknown guy from earlier is shown to be on his tail. At the Rembrandt Company, while Makoto and Hazel were waiting in the lounge, it is revealed that the witch doctor who cursed Patrick's wife and daughters was still in his custody. After torturing the doctor, Patrick heads to lead Makoto and Hazel to the laboratory where they brewed a formula for the cure from ruby eyes. Makoto speeds up the process with his magic, and with the first bottle done, Patrick straight up rushes to treat his wife. While the other bottles were being prepared, the butler reveals how Patrick's wife is going completely berserk and even destroyed her husband's arm. Makoto volunteers to restrain the woman, and even though Patrick was not sure about that, Makoto holds them down pretty easily, and Patrick treats them completely with the help of the medicine. With the job at Rembrandt Company done, Makoto heads out to meet his girls waiting, but before they could talk further, the adventurer who was on Makoto's tail jumps them. The adventurer's name was Lime, and Makoto obviously destroyed him and all of his minions. Tomo sees through Lime's memories right when she's about to kill him, and instead he gets a chance to explain. Lime reveals how he didn't have any intention of doing anything bad to Patrick, but they were just fed up with Patrick's influence and arrogance throughout the city. After hearing this, Makoto spares Lime's life, and Mio gets her reward out of the poor guy before he is sent to Rembrandt for an apology. Lime's apology is accepted by Patrick, and since he had retired as an adventurer, Tomo hires him as a spy and gifts him a katana alongside an advanced paycheck for the month. Later on, after the job was done and dusted. Instead of going back, Tomo heads over to spy on Patrick, and we get to know how, despite being grateful to Makoto, the idea of Makoto getting into the trading business was still not sitting right with Patrick and his ego. After all this mess, Makoto finally returns back to the demiplane to have some moments of peace, but Emma remarks how there is another problem ready to be dealt with. The problem at hand was how the species living in the demiplane had lost their spirit to actually train hard and get stronger. Laziness had been getting to their head, so while his women were arguing, Makoto comes up with a plan to do some research and splits up to find the root of the problem himself. Makoto heads over to the orcs after sending Tomo to the lizardmen, and finds out how the orcs don't feel like training since there was too much of a difference between them and their young master. After realizing that there is some beef among the species on who is better, Tomo proposes a duel, and after the match concludes, she lectures the residents of the demiplane to bring their spirits right back up. Seeing the moment as fitting, Tomo announces a game-like ranking system in the demiplane, called Demiplane Rankings, and even though it sounded pretty cliché, the ranking system somewhat sorted out the lack of enthusiasm. With the demiplane now back on track, and the next goal being his journey as an aspiring businessman, Makoto's unusual Isekai adventure continues as he improves himself and those around him without knowing the evils that will be on his path. And that would be it for today's recap. Comment down below the shows that you want to see next, and don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on future videos. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.